Each morning, we must hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, and to give back. We bid you welcome. We do not ask that you believe or expect you to think in a certain way, but only that you live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Welcome all who believe that religion is wider than any sect and deeper than any set of opinions. Welcome all who might find in our friendship strength and encouragement for daily living. Good morning and welcome to the Universalist Unitarian Church of Farmington. My name is Linda Brown. I'm on the board at UUCF, the Vice President of Administration. That means I get to do the fun contract business type stuff. This morning we are fortunate to have a guest speaker. Brian Peterson Roost from Bees and the D is with us today. And please, after the service, we'll have a nice Q&A session with Brian. I'd like to extend a special welcome to any visitors today. After the service, we invite you to gather at the back of the meeting house, or since it's a nice day, out in the parking lot, and we'll have some refreshments, I think, set up out there, and we'll have a chance to socialize and get to meet you. When indoors, we are observing COVID precautions and wearing masks regardless of vaccination status. Religious education classes are being held in the social hall during the service, and usher can direct you to that location if needed. Joys and sorrows will be shared at the end of the service after the offering. You're welcome to come up to the microphone, but if you're uncomfortable in sharing it at the microphone, we do have the blue Joys and Sorrows cards sometimes in the pews for easy access, and you can fill them out and give them to an usher as they come by for the offering. Or you could text your joys and sorrows to me. My phone number's in your order of service, and just put your name so that I know who it comes from. As we begin our service, we remember that our UU principles begin with our pledge to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We are a welcoming congregation. We welcome into our community people of all races, sexual orientations, gender identities, and belief systems. Do we have any announcements today?
Good morning. My name's Tom Bjorklund. This is Hope Sorensen. We're the co-chairs of the membership committee, and we have our Founders Day Parade coming up next Saturday, like 6 days from now. A bunch of you have already told us you're going to be walking. If you have not gotten to us yet, we appreciate it if you would. The only reason we're doing RSVP for a parade sounds kind of weird, but the churches have kindly offered to throw a party for us afterwards, and they'd like some idea of how many people are going to be there. And for those who are walking, just make sure that either Hope or I have your email address so that we can send you details as we get it from the parade sometime middle of the week. Hope, you have anything to add?
Oh yeah, and we'll be having candy too, so kids are definitely welcome.
So it's fun. It's a blast.
Hi, I'm Libby Berger for Social Justice, and a couple of more personal types of social justice. One of them is, this is an absentee ballot. I'm going to put it in the mail on my way home. The primary is August 2nd. Please vote. The other thing is, I happened to notice online this morning that there is a new suicide prevention number, 988, much easier to remember. Anyway, put that on your fridge, pass it along in your Facebook. just get that number out, because you know someone who knows someone who needs to know that. And the third thing is, we still need t-shirts. We're still planning to do this quilt project. It's probably on hold for about a month because I'm going to be out of town for about a month. But anyway, please put your old t-shirts in the bin at the entryway. Thanks. The red bin, yes.
What was the date of the primary again?
August 2nd.
And I don't see Mark here today, so I will do a fundraising announcement. Just a reminder that on June 29th, at the Panera on 12 Mile? July, sorry, but okay. July 29th, we're having a fundraiser at Panera from 4 to 8. You can, if you go and order in the store or online all day, all of your food that you order, we will receive 20% of that meal. And if you get it in the evening, you know, like at, say, 6, I think we said 6 o'clock, George? I'm looking at you. We're going to gather for anybody who wants to. You can get your food, bring it to the church, 6 or 6:30. Did we say 7? Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, because of people at work. You know, after a week in the summertime, my brain just loses everything. So it's 7 o'clock. Thank you, George. If you want to get your food then, bring some chairs, and we're just going to gather here and share it at the church for anybody who wants to. Also remember that if you sign up for Script, or it's now Raise Right, and get a Panera gift card, then 8% of your gift card comes to the church. So we can double dip if you get your gift card and use that to pay for your money from Panera on that day. So see me if you don't know how to sign up for Raise Right. And again, as always, check the UUCF website or read your e-blast emails when they come out, because we always have details about all of these announcements. Okay, please join in reading our mission on the front page of our order of service. We seek answers everywhere, include everyone, live with compassion. So please rise as you are willing and able for our first hymn, number 203, All the Creatures of the Earth and Sky. We'll sing just the first 3 verses. So Brian Peterson Roost has been a fifth grade teacher in Rochester Community Schools for 23 years. You don't look like you've been a teacher for 23 years. He has a master's and specialist degree in educational leadership and administration from Oakland University and is an adjunct professor there at Oakland. Brian was personally honored by President Barack Obama for receiving the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching in 2012. He was also a recipient of the Michigan Science Teacher of the Year Award in 2011, the Human Excellence in Teaching Award in 2015, the Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Award in 2021, and was chosen as one of Crane's notable LGBTQ in Business Leaders 2021. Brian founded the nonprofit organization Bees in the D. Bees in the D is devoted to the education and conservation of honeybees and other pollinators in the Detroit area. The organization has over 200 hives at 63 different locations in southeast Michigan. I think I heard you mention Stellantis. I used to work there. And offers many workshops and classes throughout the Detroit area that share the importance and misconceptions of honeybees and pollinators. Bees in the D is excited to announce the groundbreaking of the Michigan Pollinator Center in 2022. And just remember, after the service, Brian will have a question and answer period.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me. I think I'm live, and is that good? And I appreciate your warm welcome here. This has been very encouraging for me, and I really appreciate you letting me be a guest here. I am not a podium type person, so I'm probably going to sneak out over here. And I do have a little bit of a visual presentation up on the wall up here that I'm a real visual person. And I love to educate with lots of visuals. So when they said that they could do that, I really appreciate it. But I'm going to talk with you a little bit about our organization at Start and a little bit in detail about honeybees, because they are a creature that has absolutely transformed my life. And then I'm going to talk about why bees are so beneficial to us as humans and for a lot of different things. So as you heard, about 6 years ago, I founded with my husband, also named Brian, Bees in the D. That's actually how we got our name, because we are Bryans and we live in the D, and our friends would say we're going to go see the bees in the D. And so when we were looking for a name for the organization, it was right there in front of us. And I've been beekeeping, though, for about 14 years, and actually it was brought into my life from the generosity of others. The Women's Garden Club of Rochester sent me up to Beaver Island, which is off the coast of Charlevoix. If you haven't been, put it on your bucket list. It is an amazing visit, an incredible natural island that just is beautiful. And I took a 2-week course all about beekeeping, and I caught the bug. I'm here all day, friends. So, and so I just fell in love with beekeeping. I always was that nature kid. I was not the video game kid. I was out turning over logs, catching snakes, identifying wildflowers. And I fell in love with the bees, and then they were there for me. I call beekeeping my yoga. I'm forced to slow down a little bit as I'm a very hyper person, and I just get to be a guest in a community of insects that is amazing. Like, it just blows my mind every time I go in the hives. And so then when I found out their numbers were declining and there was a lot of diseases and unfortunately other things that are ailing our pollinators, that's when I decided 6 years ago to start the nonprofit. Never expected the response that we got. I just wanted to help support my little love of beekeeping, had my 6 hives, I was content, and then it became 29 hives, and then it became 102 hives, then it became 220 hives at now over 70 locations across 5 counties. So it's been a really wild ride that has opened up a lot of really incredible opportunities for me. Okay, if you walk out of here learning one thing today, this is what I would like for you to know. I have 2 beautiful insects up here. I'm not here to bash wasps, but one of them is a wasp, and that is the one on your right that is more kind of yellow and black. They are a yellow jacket. And the one on the left are our fuzzy little golden honeybees. Two very different creatures, very similar in some aspects, but bees really want nothing to do with you. They are too busy trying to take care of their colonies and for the good of the hive. They're too busy visiting flowers. The yellow jackets, on the other hand, tend to get into your personal bubble. If you've gone to the zoo and you go to throw something away and you feel like you can't even get near the trash can, those are yellow jackets. If you've gone to the cider mill and had donuts and cider and there's a bee that's bothering you or going in your cup, those are yellow jackets. They are a wasp. And so that's one thing that I have devoted myself to be a voice for the bees, because I always say to kids, have you ever been blamed for something that you didn't do? And of course, everybody has. I said, that's the life of a honeybee, because we're constantly saying how the bees are so bad and these bees are bothering us. No, those would be wasps for the most part, wasp and hornets. But they are very similar in size. There is one other real big difference that's quite amazing. They're stingers. They both can sting. We've probably all experienced it, but most of us have been stung by a wasp. Wasp, their stinger does not have a barb like a honeybee's does. And so when a wasp stings you, it can sting again and again and again, and you've probably experienced that if they got up in your shirt or something like that. A honeybee, it's one and done. Their little barb sticks in your skin, rips their abdomen, and they perish, defending their hive. So if you've never had to remove a stinger after you've been stung, you were not stung by a bee, you were stung by a wasp. So that's a quick way to know that. Why is the bee like that? Believe it or not, scientists believe that bees are more advanced than wasps. And you may go, but wait, that seems like it's not advanced because they're sacrificing their lives. It doesn't make sense. No, it actually makes a lot of sense, because there is a venom gland at the end of the stinger that stays in you to continue to pump venom. So if a bear attacks their hive, it's the ultimate sting, and it helps get the bear away from the hive. So actually, it's on purpose, but they're willing to sacrifice themselves for the good of the hive. But honeybees are not native to North America. They actually were brought over because we made America a country of agriculture. Most of the crops that we raise throughout our country are not native either. We brought them in, and there's big money. And so our native bees are mainly solitary. Kind of blow your mind a little bit. In Michigan alone, there's over 460 different species of bees. In the United States, about 4,000, and worldwide, 20,000 different species of bees. That's not wasp and hornets, that's just bees. But almost all of them are solitary, meaning that they prefer to just be alone. I feel like that sometimes too. But they don't build colonies like honeybees do. And then the native colony bees like bumblebees, the big fat ones, right here that we see on our flowers that we love. They do smaller colonies. But most of them are solitary, and for that reason, there's strength in numbers. A honeybee hive has about 60,000 bees in it. If you have 60,000 pollinators in one pollinator, a lot more is going to get pollinated. And so that is why we have our bees, and I'm going to talk a little bit further about that. These are the key 4 players in the bee and wasp world. The honeybee in the bottom right, and next to it's the yellow jacket that we talked about. And up above, I kind of briefly talked about our friend the bumblebee. That's just so fun to watch. And then many of you have probably noticed up in the corners of your eaves or under your grill or something, a little platform, and those are hornets. Really, most bees and wasps and hornets don't want anything to do with you. It's just if you get too close or disturb their home is when they kind of are not so nice. And the yellow jackets at the end of the season especially are just desperate for food. And so they're willing to get in your personal space to get some. One other one I want to highlight is this bottom one, and it's called a bald-faced hornet. They're kind of white, and ooh, do they pack a punch. So you want to stay away from them, but they are very aggressive, unlike our bees. I don't even use the word aggressive with bees. I use defensive. So let's go through a honeybee hive, because I think you'll enjoy hearing the complexity of what is going on in this little box or hollow tree. Every hive has one queen, and this queen isn't sitting up on her throne telling everybody what to do. She's actually one of the hardest working bees in the colony. Isn't it great when your leaders are hard workers? And so she is distinguishable from the other bees because she's got a big old booty. All right, it's a long abdomen that allows her to be able to lay upwards of 2,500 eggs a day because she needs to build up her colony to be strong. And unfortunately, the worker bees, which we'll get to in a second, only live about 40 days. They're very short-lived because they actually work themselves to death. That's where we get the expression busy as a bee, because they are constantly working. But she is ultimately responsible for the population of the hive, and she gives off pheromones to communicate. And so bees don't go in each other's hives. This is their family, this is their family, and the queen gives off a pheromone so they know which hive is theirs. If they need to replace the queen, she lives up to 5 years, believe it or not, which is pretty long-lived for an insect. But if she starts to tuck her out, it's for the good of the hive, she's going to lay her replacement. She's laying an egg, they're going to power feed those larvae, and it's going to form what is right there, a queen cell, to make a brand new queen. First queen out, because they make about a dozen of them, is probably going to be the new queen. She goes and she finds all the other queen cells, chews them out, and stings her sisters to death. By the way, the queen bee does not have a barb on her stinger because she needs to do repetitive stings. Isn't nature amazing? It's very Game of Thrones at this point. But so then once she's done, she goes out and does her mating flight, and then she is good to go for her life and is going to lay all those eggs. This is a worker bee. It's a female. Okay, ladies, get it out of your system. Only girls work in the hive. Boy bees do nothing except for breed with a virgin queen. So you can elbow the person next to you, ladies, and get on them about how it's just like the humans. All the women do all the work. But it is true in the bee world. Only female bees do work, and they're about 95% of the hive. They do all of the jobs and rotate through those jobs in their short life. So they clean out the cells, then they're nurse bees, and then they're housekeepers, they're builders, they're guards, and then eventually foragers. And scientists still are amazed at how the bees just instinctively know when to switch jobs. It's quite amazing. They have those cool pollen sacs on their legs to bring back their proteins for the hive, the pollen from the plant, and they have a honey gut that absorbs up the nectar. They slurp it up like a straw through a proboscis, and that allows them to then bring that nectar back to the hive. That nectar is what we know as honey eventually. And they're bringing that back, and it's about almost all water, much like maple syrup. When we have maple syrup, the sap, it's all water, and we boil it to get rid of the water, and the sugars stay behind. Well, the bees don't have little stoves in their hive that they can boil it away. So what they do is they put it in the honeycomb that they constructed, and there's bees that's their job just to fan over that, and it evaporates the water. When it's about 17% on the nose, the bees know, they then seal it with wax, and it is now officially honey that we love. And we are so thankful that bees are much more productive than us humans, and they make a surplus. And that's what allows us to go in and get honey so that we can enjoy it as well. This is a boy bee. Notice his big old eyes and his big body. They live one summer season. So how is there a boy bee and a girl bee? The queen determines that. When she lays an egg, she can lay a fertile egg, or she can lay an egg that's not fertile. The fertile eggs become a girl bee, workers. The eggs that are not fertile actually develop into a living creature, even though they have one chromosome, and they become boy bees. It's quite amazing, because in the chicken world, it becomes breakfast. It doesn't develop into a living thing. And so the boys, their goal is just to pass on their lineage. I'll keep it kind of rated G. And so that's their goal. But at the end of the season, because the bees go into what's called a winter cluster, one of the few insects that does this, the bees actually are genetically a little different towards the end of the summer. They're more designed to vibrate. And when you vibrate, you create friction, and friction creates heat. And they actually form a cluster, a ball in the hive, vibrating, and the queen's in the middle at a balmy 90 degrees all winter long. And it takes a lot of energy to do that. And so what are they feeding on? The honey that they stored up. So they're filling their cupboards to last for the winter. For that reason, they don't want this freeloader to be in the hive in the wintertime, so all the female bees push them out at the end of summer and they perish to the elements. So they basically kill off all the males. Told ya, Game of Thrones. But it is for the good of the hive. That's the amazing thing. They are doing this to keep themselves healthy. It's quite amazing. These are just the jobs that they go through. Now, here's where they are important to us for our food industry and our ecosystem. They are at the base of the whole food pyramid because they pollinate. A lot of people don't realize that most plants have a boy flower and a girl flower. And the girl flower needs the boy flower's pollen in order to go to seed or fruit. I'm going to tell you a little story that when I lived in Lake Orion, that this is completely the truth. I had a huge garden, love gardening, got my Master Gardener certificate last summer, incredible program. But I was noticing my zucchini plants, this was before I was a beekeeper, the female flowers were beautiful, big yellow flowers. Those of you that garden know what I'm talking about. But then they just shrivel up and die off the vine. And I'd get no fruit because they weren't being pollinated. I didn't have any bees in the area. And unfortunately, the bee numbers were declining. So I literally would go out with a paintbrush and I would go from the male flower to the female flower. I was the bee. And I got a few zucchini, but I'm not near as efficient as bees are. And after I got my beehives in Lake Orion, I am not making this up. I learned how to make zucchini bread, cookies, pasta. I was putting zucchini on people's front porch and ringing the doorbell and running. I didn't know what to do with all of it. And it was such a great visual for me that this is why we have our pollinators. They are the ones that are bringing all of our things to seed and fruit. And not all crops, like corn is wind pollinated. It doesn't need bees, but most of our crops do. They say 1 in 3 bites is dependent on pollinators. And I want you to think beyond fruits and vegetables. Alfalfa is an important crop for our cattle to eat. If alfalfa doesn't go to seed, we can't plant it to grow more alfalfa. So we need the bees to pollinate it so that we have the seed, so we can feed our cows, so we can have a lovely ice cream cone in the summertime. So bees are related to things that we even don't think that they're related to. Pollination in America is huge. I mean, ultimately, honey itself is valued at 309 million. 157 million pounds of honey is produced in North America alone. I'm going to talk about some of the states there. And then we go on into the billions when it comes to our crops. If we didn't have these pollinators, we're in trouble. And we won't have the diversity of food that we have. This is a real picture in China of somebody doing what I was doing with my zucchini. She's doing a cherry blossoms. But the pollution in some areas of China is so bad that their bee populations are gone. And so they have now gotten to the point that they are hiring people to pollinate the plants. Walmart 5 years ago bought a patent for a drone. It is a tiny little robot that has brushes that can take pollen from flower to flower. It scares me a little bit because it's not near as efficient as our bees, but the fact that a powerhouse like Walmart is buying the patent for it scares me that we maybe don't know some things that they know. It's cool, but I think bees are, it's natural. So how do bees communicate? This is gonna blow your mind, and I have a short little video so you can stop listening to me for a little bit. And it is crazy. They dance. When they communicate, one way is through smell, like the bees that are out front guarding the hive. I can smell as a beekeeper when they're getting nervous. They release a pheromone that's called the alert pheromone. That's letting all the other bees that are doing other jobs in the hive, you need to stop what you're doing because we have somebody invading our hive. I need help out front. And so when I smell that pheromone, I can give a couple puffs of smoke. If you've ever seen a beekeeper, they have a smoker. It helps mask that pheromone and also makes the bees more docile. They basically get a gut full of honey or nectar because they're fearful that their hive could be in trouble, and that makes them very lethargic, much like you after Thanksgiving meal, watching the Lions lose. So that is why we use a smoker. But if they find a good food source or a water source, they need to let all their sisters know where it's at. And this video is going to show you how they do that, and it's going to blow your mind. It's going to show you how the natural world is just remarkable.
The hive is hungry. Some 30,000 honeybees need pollen now. A single jar of the honey you can buy in any store requires 1 million flower visits. Scouts disperse several miles in each direction, searching for untapped fields. This scout makes a promising find. Pollen sacs bulge from her legs, but she can't harvest all of it herself. She needs help, lots of it. She spreads the news of her find by dancing. This waggle dance is based on a figure 8. The scout moves at an angle, waggles, reverses direction, and waggles some more. Her flower point presentation has to communicate 3 things. First, she moves at an angle. The angle indicates the direction of the flowers in relation to the sun. The hive's honeycombs are built vertically, so straight up means towards the sun. Down means away from the sun, and so on. Second, distance. She waggles her abdomen rapidly. The more she waggles, the further the distance. Third, flower type. The pollen she collected provides a scent cue for the others to smell for. Her presentation is a success. Several sisters return with her to forage in the field. They, in turn, will bring back more pollen and spread the word until the hive is finally full.
Come on. I mean, wow. So if you have that beautiful crabapple tree out front and it's blooming and you notice 1 or 2 bees on it, and then an hour later you're noticing dozens of bees, it's because they went back to the hive to communicate, I found a really good plant that we can use. And they do it by dance. How did we figure this out? They put scientists out in a giant field at different stations with water, sugar water, and they had a different color at each station that they put a little dot on the back of the thorax of the bee. And then they had cameras in the hive, and they watched how the red bee was doing it and how the green bee was doing it, and we were able to crack the code of how they are communicating with each other, to the point that they actually made little robot bees that they programmed to do the dance to see if the bees would go to where they programmed it to go. Spot on. They went right to where they programmed it. Quite amazing. They have odorants that they can detect smells that are stronger than dogs. So bees have an incredible sense of smell, in a sense, not like what we think of smell, though. Oops, I want to go back to that. So bees in our country are moved throughout. Commercial beekeepers actually lift up the hives, put them on semis, and go all around our nation. One of the most crucial locations is California, our almond trees. Unfortunately, when we started building our agricultural world, we did it wrong. We've created mono-societies, and we didn't realize that we needed to have a rotations of crops, because that's why we have to move our pollinators, because the almond trees only bloom for a 2-week window. And in that 2-week window, after it's done, they're going to starve. And so they have to lift the hives and bring them elsewhere. Not to mention, the bees there help production hugely. So almonds, if we didn't bring the bees there, would probably be upwards of $100+ per pound. Because the bees are there, they help pollinate, which gives us a lot more almonds, which brings the prices down. Notice the states, no surprise California, no surprise citrus in Florida. The Dakotas, highest producing honey states in our nation. Sunflowers, oils. The bees love sunflowers, and that is where a lot of our commercial beekeepers reside. I'm actually flying out to, through a USDA grant, South Dakota next month, and I'm educating 1 teacher representative from every school district in South Dakota about beekeeping so they can start teaching it at the high schools, because they realize in their state it's a very important job, but they don't do any training for students. So I'm very excited about that. Real quick, in the video you heard them talk about honey and millions of flowers. Let me just kind of illustrate that for you. These 2 bottles together is about 16 ounces, all right, a little bit more. It would take about 1,200 bees out of the hive, and if I was to calculate all of their miles going back and forth all day long, It would be about 112,000 miles, 3 times around the earth. Now, they only go about a 3 to 5 mile radius from their hive, but they just keep going back and forth to the flower source. And they would have to visit 4.5 million flowers to make one 16-ounce jar of honey. One bee in its lifetime makes about 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey. So if you eat 1 teaspoon of honey, you just ate 12 bees' life work. Think about it like that. They worked really hard for you. So if it drips off those muffins or those biscuits, lick that plate when you're done, because they worked really hard. And just to give you a little bit about honey as well, please support your local beekeepers. Get the real deal. Get the raw honey. It does crystallize. You can just put it in a hot bath and it gets back to normal. But that honey has a lot of properties that are very good for your health as well. And so I really encourage you, you get what you pay for. You might have to pay a little bit more, but it's worth it because you're also supporting local beekeepers. I kind of talked about that a little bit. And so what is Bees in the D doing? We're trying to build a bee highway. Not literally little roads up in the sky, but a fictitious highway that the bees can have. And what they need is the essentials: food, water, shelter. And so Bees in the D is supporting by providing shelter for honeybees. And then we're working with a lot of people, homeowners, planting more native plants, pollinator plants, putting out bowls of water to help provide the essentials that they need. We have about 220 hives at 70 locations. This is our little map because we use something called Hive Tracks to keep track of everything. And we look at the satellite and images to try to decide where we should put more hives, because we're trying to fill in the gaps, because the thing that we hear all the time is, I don't see bees in my garden anymore. Well, we want to help try to fix that. We want your garden to be as productive as possible so you can have wonderful foods. This is just the city. We have 91 hives. Those weird rings represent 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile. So you can kind of get an idea of how far out the bees are going. So I know I could talk all day, and a lot of times I talk too long, but I'll also do some questions and answers at the end. But I wanted to show you our video that kind of goes with what we're doing, because it's good to see the visual. And I do want to ask you before I do the video, though, and you don't have to answer out loud, but there's really 3 main areas that people live. They either live in a rural area out in the country, they live in a suburban area, so it's a city that's outside of a larger city, much like here, or in the city itself, an urban area. Bees, you can put them in any of them. We have bees in all 3 areas, so we are kind of a test to see this. I want you to think to yourself, where do you think the bees are the most productive and the most successful? Is it the rural areas? Is it the suburban areas? Or is it the urban areas? I think the answer is really going to surprise you. And more scientists have been studying this, like Best Bees out of Boston. It's the urban area. They are finding that pollinators are flourishing in urban environments. And here's why: diversity of plant life. It seems opposite, but think about the rural. We've created monosocieties. It's cornfields forever and ever, soybeans. And we're using a lot more pesticides and insecticides to help those crops. So it's harmful for those. Think about the suburbs. Keeping up with the Jones, got the perfect yard, no weeds, don't want those. And weeds are great for our pollinators. And so let those dandelions grow. I'm giving you permission. Let the grass grow a little bit longer. It helps conserve water as well. We don't have to have the perfect lawns all the time. And I love that the narrative is kind of changing with that, because we can coexist with nature in a wonderful way. But in the cities, there's a great diversity of plant life because mainly weeds in the vacant lots. And then we work with a lot of the companies about planting more native bee-friendly and pollinator-friendly. It really is quite remarkable, and I think it's a beautiful picture that we should use as well, that diversity is key. Diversity of life is the key. We should be open to all diversities, and that's why I feel very welcome here, and I want to thank you for that. So let's go ahead and watch this video. Peterson Roost, and I am the founder and president of Bees in the D. Bees in the D was started in 2014, but you have to go a little bit before that. where beekeeping became a part of my life. They were there for me when I was going through kind of a hard time, the bees were. And so when I moved down to the city and was reading about how the bees are now going through a hard time, it was time to give back. The mission of Bees in the D really stems on two pillars, education and conservation. Bees are extremely important to our ecosystem for many reasons. They are pollinators of most of the foods that we eat, and so we need them for our food industry, but they're also important to our ecosystem, something we don't think about. Unfortunately, the bee populations have been declining steadily, not just honeybees, but all bees, even the native bees. So beekeepers are a part of this great big picture because they need to help manage the hives and keep them healthy. That's where Bees in the D comes in. We are helping to provide beehives throughout the city to help pollinate all of our gardens and our plants. So Detroit has become a real leader in urban beekeeping because so many of the vacant lots are now being turned over into gardens and a real part of the urban farming initiative that's happening in the city. One of the things about our See two organization hives that right I there. love is all of the partnerships that we get to be a part of and the amazing people we meet. Right there. You can be extremely involved, actually suiting up and getting in the hives with us, or you could be not involved at all. We just need access to where the hives are, and Bees in the D will take care of everything. Let's continue to work together to make Detroit the best it can be. And that beautiful setting that I'm on there is the convention center, where the auto show is. They have a beautiful green roof, and we have 4 hives up there. And what's fun is a lot of our locations, like the Shinola Hotel, the honey then is used in the restaurant down below. And so we do provide a lot of honey for many of the restaurants in Detroit. We actually have hives up on Detroit City Distillery, which is the old Stroh's ice cream plant on Gratiot. And we actually take 55 gallons of our honey and we put it in a bourbon barrel and let it age for 3 months. And it takes on that wonderful bourbon flavor. And then they actually make a honey bourbon by adding honey to the bourbon. And so having these fresh natural ingredients that are right from the source is kind of special. So that's just a little bit about us, and if you are intrigued and want to learn more, I try to do education. It's at my heart. I've been educating for as long as I can remember, and I do a lot of little videos, like my Forager Fridays, where I highlight a plant every Friday. It's about a 1-minute video, because I know attention spans are about 1 minute. I work with 5th graders, I get it. And I do a lot of live videos. Melanie, who's one of my volunteers, we're always on the go. So after here, we're heading out to hives. And we're doing a honey harvest tomorrow. And so we're collecting the frames to do that so that we can get the honey for our events coming up. So that concludes it. Now, normally I go right into questions, but we're going to hold off on questions until after a few other things with the service, correct? And so you said I can just stay up here and then we'll do questions at the end. Thank you for letting me share my passion.
Nope, don't need it. Well, thank you, Brian. Boy, I knew some, but I learned a lot today, so thank you very much.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. forgot. A perfect heart is one that has known love and loss, joy and sorrow. The perfect heart is one that is shared. As joys and sorrows of our community are shared, please direct your energy, prayers, and meditation as a gift of compassion and strength. Please rise if you're willing and able to join in our second hymn. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot something. If you have visiting us for the first time and you are comfortable doing so, please stand and tell us where you're from and how you heard about us. We would like to meet you.
Hey everyone, I'm Connor and this is Ikoy, and we recently moved to Novi and heard about you guys online through the Facebook, and happy to be here. Great.
Excellent, welcome. Anybody else today?
I'm Becca. I came here a few times last summer, but I brought family today. My husband Kyle, Edwin, and
Welcome. Well, we're glad to have you with us today, and thank you for introducing yourselves. Now, if you would please rise as you are willing and able for our second hymn, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. We will sing all the verses. Our closing words are from Chief Noah Self, "We belong to the earth." This we know, the earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This we know. All things are connected like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves.